Hello, my name is Lily Cunis. I was an exchange student this last year with CBYX, so the Congress Bundestag Youth Exchange Program, and this video is about my program being ended short due to the COVID-19 or the coronavirus, and pretty much my adventures with it in the last 72 hours. I just wanted to tell the story of how I found out that I was being sent home early from my exchange year. I am being sent home at least 3 months early from my year, and also pretty much the whole process with the corona testing at the airport, because we were coming from an international area. They did all the testing, or not all the testing, but a good amount of the testing. And pretty much the whole chaos that came with the last 72 hours. To begin with, how I found out that I was being sent home early. So it started off, there were many rumors and many other colleges were being shut down in the United States. Places were going on 2-week breaks and quarantine, everything. And then we got an email from the Department of State saying that our year was being terminated. So what happened was we got this email, and I was in the middle of my tourism management class, and I saw the email and I just started crying, and then I called my host dad to tell him what's up, and then I left early from the school day. I did say goodbye to my class because the letter said we would be leaving as soon as possible, no other dates. It could be in the next 24 hours or it could be in 3 days. So I did not know, but I just took a little bit of action to say, hey, I am going to be going back to the United States. I had about 30 minutes where I did not know when I was leaving or when I would come back to the United States. And so I had then the email that said we were meeting up at Frankfurt, so all of the Partnership International students and the experiment, and together we were underneath the team CIEE in the US, and we all had to go to Frankfurt and meet there, and then the next day we would fly out. So I had around 24 hours to pack up my entire life in Germany and say goodbye to my entire life in Germany. So my friends came over that night and they helped me pack, and then I had one last dinner with my host family, and I went to bed, and then I woke up the next morning and I went to 1 hour of school so then I could say an official goodbye to all of my friends, and then I had to leave. So I went to the train station with my host family and they said goodbye, and then I was off in a 5-hour train ride to Frankfurt. That train ride to Frankfurt, I needed to spend a night there, and I was with all of the other exchange students that I had spent 1 month of a language camp with, and pretty much it was fun, but at the same time it was also, everybody was sad and crying, and I had no more tears left because I cried so much. Saturday, with March 14th, that was when it was official flying out day. And to begin with, many kids did have coughs or just little sniffles, so we were all pretty much preparing to be pulled aside for testing because these kids were sick, but we didn't know what was in store for us, so we pretty much made it to Frankfurt, and then we had to fly from Frankfurt to Washington, D.C., and then Washington, D.C. is where we'd have all of our connecting flights back to our homes. And so that was an 8-hour flight, but it was okay. But then finally we landed in D.C., and that is when all of the chaos begins. Once we landed in D.C., it was around 3:15, and at that time they handed out the coronavirus papers. I will attach one right here. And it was pretty much saying what your name is, what flight, all of that information, and then if you've been to China in the last 2 weeks or more, and then just pretty much all other countries that you've been to. So we all had to fill that out, and then we were waiting on the plane for about 30 minutes, and then they had everybody get off of the plane into this tunnel, and pretty much that tunnel is the one that's in between the plane and terminal, so it's pretty much when you walk on it to wait to load for the plane, and that's what we were waiting in for about 15 minutes, and that had the entire plane in this tunnel, and it was so hot, sweaty. It was if one person had corona in that tunnel of us, we would all be sick by the end of it because it was so tightly compacted inside of there. And then from that tunnel we walked through the terminal a bit, and then they took us to the shuttles, And these shuttles, I will insert a photo here, they are absolutely terrifying to look at. But so we had those like terminal tunnels, and then we were in those shuttles, and then that's when they handed us our US Customs form. Say hi, everybody. Hi. Hello. And then we went into another terminal, which was specific just for corona testing, and that pretty much, I'll insert another photo here, they pretty much had all of these doctors sitting at tables, and then they had areas sectioned off for when people had to get further testing. So these tables, the doctors were there, and then people would get called up one by one. And so when I was called up, they asked me questions, they went over my papers, and then they took my temperature. My temperature was at 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is the starting temperature of corona. I began panicking, because then they pulled me aside, they gave me a mask, I'll insert photos here. They gave me a mask, and I was just absolutely terrified. So then they pulled me aside, and then they decided to start taking my temperature more while they were asking me questions. So the first temperature that they took after pulling me aside was at 100.8, but that was because I was panicked, and I was worried and very flustered. But then after some time went on, it went down to 99.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and then lastly it ended at 99.1 degrees Fahrenheit. And I had no other symptoms, I had no coughing, no shortness of breath, nothing. So they said that it was okay for me to go, but I had to wear the mask. So the rest of my travels, I had to wear one of those medical masks, even though I don't think I necessarily needed it. But that took around 2 hours. And by the time I was done with that, I had about 1 hour before my plane left, and I still had to go through customs, I had to go through security again, I had to check all my bags. It was a disaster. So I went into customs, and that took over an hour too. And so I was waiting in customs with some other exchange students, and then finally I got pulled up and I had my customs paper, but my customs paper did not have a red dot. So what that means is the red dot says that you were tested for corona, you're okay, but mine didn't have the red dot. So it caused panic in the customs because they did not know what to do, and I started to explain to them that I went through it all, they tested me, I'm okay, like I just have to wear the mask. I explained my temperatures, and then other exchange students were coming in and they're like, yes, she was tested, everything's okay. Yeah, it was a panicking moment, but after about 5 minutes of talking, they let me go, and they just marked up a couple things, and I had to write down some personal information. So, yep, by that time, my flight had already left. So, I was panicked, I was crying, I was a mess, because it was just so stressful with all of this corona stuff, and I was just ready to go home. But I luckily had another person who's flying to Colorado, so we stuck together, and then we talked to the other fantastic people from CIEE. Yeah, it was very stressful, but then I was able to book another flight with United, and they were all very helpful, and I was luckily able to come home. It was leaving 10 p.m. from DC, and it landed at 12 a.m. so on Sunday. But yeah, it was pretty much an okay experience. It was definitely a little weird to see everything, and I'm happy to be home, but it was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It was weird to be traveling during Corona, I gotta say, and not recommend traveling. And pretty much for the next 2 weeks I have no school, so then it's just an extended spring break, and then I'm just relaxing, staying inside. I'm happy to be home, I'm happy to be in the warm Colorado weather again, and I'm hoping that the corona dies down. But yeah, this is a small Auf Wiedersehen or ein Tschüss, and I will be posting a video soon that I filmed before I left Germany. It was literally the day before all of this happened, and I will also be posting a video of what I brought back as little souvenirs and as gifts for people from my exchange year. So yeah, Auf Wiedersehen!